The hook, the most responsible move that breaks everything. What if the most responsible financial decision imaginable was also the most dangerous? Picture this. Governments balance their budgets. Nations pay down their debt. Households finally become debt-free. No more interest payments. No more IOUs. No more chains. It sounds like the end of financial stress. But here's the mystery almost no one talks about. If debt were actually paid off at scale, the global financial system wouldn't stabilize. It would unravel. Why would eliminating debt, the very thing blamed for every crisis, trigger collapse instead of relief? And how did we build a system where owing money is essential to money itself? To understand that, we need to follow the story from its origins, because this outcome wasn't an accident. Part 1. Origins. When money and debt became the same thing for thousands of years, money existed independently of debt. Gold, silver, grain, livestock money represented something tangible. Debt was a temporary claim, not the system's foundation. Ancient civilizations understood the danger of permanent debt. That's why Mesopotamian rulers periodically erased debts through jubilees, preventing social collapse. Debt was allowed but never allowed to dominate. That balance broke when banking evolved. Early banks stored precious metals and issued receipts. Those receipts were redeemable. But bankers noticed something critical. Most people never came back to claim the metal. So banks began lending more receipts than they had gold. This was the birth of fractional reserve banking, where money could be created by issuing loans. For the first time, money didn't just represent value, it created obligations. Debt stopped being a tool and became the engine. Part 2. The rise. How debt took over the entire system as economies grew. Governments adopted this system. Wars, infrastructure, and expansion demanded more spending than taxes could provide. Borrowing became normal. Then came the turning point. The abandonment of gold backing in the 20th century. Once currencies were no longer tied to physical limits, debt became unlimited. Here's the crucial mechanic most people never learn. In modern economies, money is created when debt is created. Banks don't lend existing money. They create new money when issuing loans. When loans are repaid, that money disappears. Interest, however, is never created, only owed. So the system needs ever-increasing debt just to keep circulating money available. This isn't a flaw. It's how the system survives. Growth became mandatory. Debt became permanent. Part 3. The breaking point. Why paying off debt destroys money now. The paradox emerges. If everyone started paying off debt faster than new loans were issued, the total money supply would shrink. Less money means less spending. Less spending means falling profits. Falling profits lead to layoffs, defaults, and panic. This is deflation, and it terrifies central banks more than inflation ever could. History shows this clearly. During the Great Depression, widespread debt repayment and defaults caused massive money destruction. Banks failed. Economies collapse. That's why modern crises are met with emergency lending, stimulus, and bailouts. Not to eliminate debt, but to prevent it from disappearing. If governments paid off national debt, bond markets would collapse, pension funds would lose core assets, banks would lose their primary income streams. The system has no way to function without outstanding debt. Part 4. The fallout. Why crises always end the same way. Every financial crisis follows the same pattern. Debt expands. Pressure builds. Something breaks. But the solution is always identical. Losses are transferred upward and outward. Private debt becomes public debt. Central banks inject liquidity. Rates are lowered. Borrowing resumes. Debt is never eliminated. It's extended. The public is told this restores stability. In reality, it preserves the system by postponing collapse. Each cycle ends with more debt than before and more dependence on centralized financial power. The illusion of solvency is maintained. Reality is deferred. Part 5. Failed fixes. WHY nitrogen. Monoxide reform touches the core. Many reform movements promise solutions: balanced budgets, hard money, digital currencies, debt forgiveness, but none escape the core contradiction. Erase too much debt, and the institutions holding it fail. Remove debt entirely, and money itself vanishes. Even debt forgiveness must be offset. Someone absorbs the loss. That's why reform never removes the foundation. It only rearranges who owes whom. The system can survive defaults. It cannot survive debt freedom. Part 6. Modern Parallels. The debt trap accelerates today. Global debt exceeds global economic output. This isn't because everyone suddenly became irresponsible. It's because the system requires expansion just to function. Low interest rates didn't reduce a debt. They encouraged more borrowing. Quantitative easing didn't reset the systemic. Deepened dependence. Each fix increases scale and fragility. The pattern repeats faster each time. Debt grows. Trust thins. Intervention increases, and the system survives until belief fails. Conclusion: 3 key takeaways. First, in the modern economy, money and debt are inseparable. Second, paying off debt en masse would destroy the money supply and collapse financial institutions. Third, crises are not failures. They are maintenance events for a debt-based system. Final warning: the question no one asks. The system doesn't ask whether debt can be repaid. It asks whether people will continue believing it can be rolled over forever. Because when money is built on trust, collapse begins when confidence ends. Call to action: if this reframed how you see debt, money, and power. Subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden mechanics shaping the global system. Understanding the rules doesn't free you, but it stops you from believing the myths.